The phone call came at 40:17 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at my ceiling for the past hour, the way old men do when sleep doesn't want them anymore. I'd been a widower for 11 years, and the bet on Helen's side still felt wrong, even after all that time. So when the phone rang, I was already half awake, my hand reaching for it before the second ring. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman I didn't know. She introduced herself as a charge nurse at Mass General in Boston, and she asked if I was the father of Diana Marie Whitfield. I sat up so fast my back went into a spasm. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'm her father. What's happened?" "Sir, your daughter was admitted to our intensive care unit 4 days ago. She's been asking for you. We've been trying to reach a family member, but the contact information we had on file kept going to voicemail." 4 days. My only child had been in the ICU for 4 days and nobody had told me. I felt the room tilt sideways. 4 days, I said. "What do you mean 4 days? Why am I just hearing about this now?" The nurse hesitated. I could hear her choosing her words. "Mr. Whitfield, we had her husband's number listed as the primary emergency contact. We've been calling him repeatedly. He told us yesterday that he would notify the family. When you didn't show up, I went to her file myself this morning and found your number listed under father. I'm sorry, sir. I should have called you sooner." I was already pulling on my pants with one hand, the phone wedged against my shoulder. "What's wrong with her? Tell me everything." "Sir, I can't go into all the medical details over the phone, but your daughter has acute kidney failure. Both kidneys. She's on dialysis right now and she's on the transplant list, but her condition is critical. She needs you here." I told her I was coming. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, in the same house Helen and I had bought in 1981. Boston was a long way. I threw a duffel bag together with shaking hands, called the airline, and got the first flight out of Charlotte at 7:40 a.m. I drove to the airport in the dark, my mind running to every possible scenario, every reason why my son-in-law hadn't picked up the phone. His name was Trevor Lansing Bouchard. The hyphenated last name should have been my first warning, honestly. He'd insisted on it when they got married 6 years ago, because his mother's family had old money in Connecticut, and he didn't want to lose the association. Diana had laughed about it then. I hadn't laughed. I'd just nodded and kept my mouth shut, the way fathers learn to do when their daughters fall in love with men they don't quite trust. Diana was 36 years old. She was a litigation attorney in a firm in the Back Bay. The kind of woman who'd worked herself to the bone since she was 19, paid off her own law school, bought her first condo before she turned 30. She was sharp, and she was kind, and she was the best thing Helen and I had ever made together. When Helen died of pancreatic cancer in 2013, Diana was the one who held me up at the funeral. She was the one who flew down once a month for 3 years to make sure I was eating. She was the one who told me, "Daddy, you have to keep living. Mom would want you to keep living." So I kept living. For her. 3 months before that 4017 a.m. phone call, Diana had stopped returning my texts the way she used to. I'd send her a photo of the dogwoods blooming in the yard, and she'd respond with a heart emoji a day later. No message. I'd call on Sunday afternoons the way we always did, and half the time it would go to voicemail. When she did pick up, she sounded tired. Tired in a way that wasn't just work tired. I'd asked her once if everything was okay, and she'd said, "Yeah, Daddy, I'm just slammed at the firm." I'd let it go because that's what you do with a 36-year-old daughter. You give her space. You trust her to tell you when something's wrong. I should have pushed harder. The flight was 3 hours of agony. I sat in the middle seat next to a businessman who kept clicking his pen, and I kept seeing Diana's face when she was 8 years old and scraped her knee on the driveway. The way she'd looked up at me like I was the only person in the world who could fix it. I'd fixed it then, a little back teen. A Band-Aid with cartoon characters on it. She'd been so brave. She didn't even cry. I landed at Logan at 11:30 a.m. and grabbed a cab. I told the driver I'd pay him double if he got me to Mass General fast, and he did. I tipped him $30 on a $38 fare, and ran into the lobby with my duffel bag still in my hand. The ICU was on the 8th floor. A nurse buzzed me through the doors and walked me down a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and something else underneath it. something I remembered from when Helen was dying. The smell of bodies fighting. She brought me to a room and stopped outside the door. "Mr. Bott, Whitfield, before you go in, I want to prepare you. Your daughter has been very sick. She's lost a lot of weight. She's also been on heavy medication, so she may drift in and out, but she's stable right now." I nodded. I couldn't speak. I pushed the door open. My little girl was lying in a hospital bed, with tubes coming out of her arms and a machine beside her, humming softly, cleaning her blood because her kidneys couldn't do it anymore. Her hair was thin. Her cheeks were sunken. She was 36, and she looked 60. I crossed the room in 3 steps and put my hand on hers, and her eyes fluttered open, and she whispered, "Daddy." That was the moment my life broke in half. There's the man I was, before that whisper, and the man I became after. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She started to cry. Slow, weak tears, the kind that come when you don't have the strength for anything bigger. "I didn't know if you'd come." "What do you mean you didn't know if I'd come?" "Of course I came. I'd have come days ago if anyone had told me." She closed her eyes. "He said you were busy. He said he was handling it." "Who said?" "Trevor." I held her hand for 2 hours while she drifted in and out. A doctor came in to talk to me, a young woman named Dr. Pham who looked exhausted in the way all hospital doctors look. Exhausted. She told me Diana had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune kidney disease 18 months ago. 18 months. Diana had been managing it with medication and dialysis appointments. But in the last 6 weeks, her function had collapsed completely. She needed a transplant. She'd been on the list for almost a year, but she'd dropped down the priority queue twice because of insurance complications. "What insurance complications?" I asked. Dr. Pham looked at me carefully. "Mr. Whitfield, I can only share so much without your daughter's express consent, but her treatment has been disrupted multiple times due to coverage lapses. Her case manager has been very concerned." I sat with that. Coverage lapses. Diana made over $300,000 a year. She had top-tier insurance through her firm. There was no reason in the world for her coverage to lapse. I asked Dr. Pham where Trevor was. She said she hadn't seen him since the previous afternoon. He'd come by, signed a couple of papers, said he had business to attend to, and left. I went down to the cafeteria around 6 p.m. because Diana was sleeping, and a nurse told me I needed to eat. I got a sandwich I didn't taste and a coffee, and sat by the window and called Trevor's cell phone. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. "I'm in Boston. I'm at the hospital. Where are you?" The text was read within 30 seconds. No response. I called a 3rd time. This time he picked up, and I could hear music in the background. Loud music. Laughter. A woman's voice saying something I couldn't quite make out. "Hey, Walter," he said. He sounded relaxed. He sounded like he was at a party. "I was going to call you. Things have been crazy. How was the flight? Where are you?" "I'm at a work thing. Networking event. I'll be at the hospital tomorrow." "Diana's stable, right?" The nurses said she was stable. "Diana is in the ICU. She's been in the ICU for 4 days. Her kidneys are failing." "I know that, Walter. I've been there. I've been there a lot. But I also have to keep working, you know? Bills don't pay themselves." He laughed, then. He actually laughed. "Hey, listen, I gotta go. We'll talk tomorrow." He hung up. I sat at that cafeteria table for a long time. I drank my cold coffee. I watched the janitor wipe down the next table over, and I thought about the sound of that laughter, and I thought about Diana whispering, "I didn't know if you'd come." My granddaughter was 4 years old. Her name was Camilla, and she was Diana and Trevor's only child. I hadn't seen her in 9 months. Diana had told me back in February that Trevor's mother was watching Camilla while Diana was getting extra rest because of work stress. I hadn't questioned it. I should have questioned it. I called Diana's best friend, a woman I'd known since they were both in middle school. Her name was Jocelyn. She picked up on the first ring and burst into tears when she heard my voice. "Walter, oh my God, you're here. Thank God you're here. Jocelyn, I need you to tell me everything you know. Everything. Don't protect anyone. Where's my granddaughter?" she told me. She told me Camilla was in Connecticut with Trevor's mother and had been there for almost 2 months because Trevor had said it was easier. She told me Trevor had been openly seeing another woman since at least January. The woman was a real estate agent named Bianca. Something, mid-30s, drove a red convertible. Jocelyn said Diana had known. Diana had confronted him in February. He told her he'd end it. He hadn't ended it. He'd just gotten better at hiding it. Jocelyn said Diana had been trying to file for divorce in March, but then her kidneys had crashed and everything went sideways. She'd been too sick to fight on 2 fronts, so she let it slide. She'd focused on staying alive. Walter, there's something else. Jocelyn's voice dropped. I don't know how to tell you this. Diana told me last month, before she got really bad. She said Trevor had been moving money from their joint accounts, from the savings she'd been putting away for Camilla's future, from the emergency fund. She didn't have proof yet, but she'd seen things on the statements. She was going to hire a forensic accountant when she got better. I closed my eyes. I felt something cold settle inside my chest. It had stayed there. Jocelyn, where is he tonight? Do you have any idea? I saw on Bianca's Instagram an hour ago. They're at some private yacht club in Newport, some charity gala thing. He's wearing a tux. A charity gala. While my daughter was lying in a hospital bed, dying. I went back upstairs to Diana's room. She was awake. The nurse had just changed her IV. I sat down beside her and I took her hand and I said, Sweetheart, I want you to listen to me. I'm going to fix this. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to fix this. You just focus on getting better. You understand me? She squeezed my hand. It was the weakest squeeze I'd ever felt. Daddy, I'm scared. I know you are, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here. I'm not leaving. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were so much like her mother's it hurt. I should have called you months ago. I was embarrassed. I didn't want you to know I'd married someone like him. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. He fooled all of us. He fooled me too. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. Where's Camilla? Connecticut. With his mother. I haven't seen her in 6 weeks. They wouldn't bring her. I'm going to get her. I'm going to bring her to you. Daddy, you can't just... Diana, listen to me. I am going to get my granddaughter, and I am going to bring her to her mother. You let me handle this. That night I slept in the chair beside her bed. The nurses brought me a blanket. I dozed maybe 2 hours total. Around 6 a.m., I went down to the lobby, found a quiet corner, and started making calls. The first call was to my old friend Calvin Brewster, who'd been my attorney for 30 years. He still practiced part-time out of his home in Greenville. Calvin had known Diana since she was a baby. When I told him what was happening, he was quiet for a long time, and then he said, Walter, what do you need? I need everything. I need to know if there's any way to get into their financial accounts. I need to know what my legal options are for the granddaughter. I need to know how to protect Diana. Walter, I have to ask, how much of their finances are tied to you? This is where I have to back up and explain something. 5 years ago, Diana and Trevor had bought a brownstone in the South End. It was a stretch for them, and they'd asked me to co-sign the mortgage. I'd done it gladly. 2 years after that, Trevor had wanted to start his own consulting firm, and Diana had asked me to help with a startup loan. I'd given them $150,000 for my retirement savings. The loan paperwork listed me as a partial owner of the LLC, with veto rights on major financial decisions, because Calvin had insisted on that protection. I'd never exercised those rights. I'd never even thought about them. The firm had grown, hired a few employees, started turning a profit. I'd assumed everything was fine. It wasn't fine. Calvin spent the morning pulling records. I sat in the hospital cafeteria and waited. Around 10:30, he called back. Walter, you need to sit down. I am sitting down. The consulting firm has been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. They've been running it as a slush fund. Trevor's been paying himself a salary that doesn't match any reasonable accounting of the firm's revenue. He's been listing personal expenses as business expenses. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry. Last month alone, he expensed $42,000. $42,000. There's more. He took out a line of credit against the firm in February. $200,000. Walter, your name is on that paperwork as a guarantor, but the signature isn't yours. It's been forged. I closed my eyes. And there's one more thing. The brownstone. He's been trying to refinance it. He started the application 6 weeks ago. Walter, if that refinance had gone through, he'd have pulled out about $300,000 in equity, all in his name. Your co-signature on the original mortgage means you'd have been on the hook if it defaulted, but you'd have had no claim to the cash. I felt sick. Truly, physically sick. Calvin, what do I do? First, you exercise your veto rights on the LLC. Today. Right now. We can have the paperwork filed by end of business. That freezes him out of the consulting firm completely. Second, we report the forged signature to the bank, which will likely freeze that line of credit and could result in criminal charges against him. Third, I'll have you talk to a friend of mine who specializes in family law in Massachusetts. We can probably get an emergency order regarding the granddaughter, given the circumstances. And fourth, Walter, you need to sit down with Diana when she's strong enough and let her decide what she wants to do. This is her marriage, her life. She tried to file for divorce in March. She got too sick. Then we move on that, too. I told him to do all of it. Every single thing. Pull every lever. Burn it all down. I gave him my power of attorney over my own affairs and authorization to act on my behalf with the LLC. By 2 p.m. that afternoon, I had the photo Jocelyn had mentioned pulled up on my phone. Trevor, in a tuxedo, on a yacht in Newport, with his arm around a woman in a gold dress. Champagne glass in his hand. Big white smile. The caption read, "Living our best life, Oko." I made copies. I screenshot everything from her social media, going back 6 months. I built a folder. That afternoon, while my daughter slept in her hospital bed and a machine cleaned her blood, I drove a rental car down to Connecticut. Trevor's mother lived in a gated community in Greenwich. Her name was Penelope, and she'd never liked me. She thought I was provincial. She'd made a comment at the wedding about my suit being from another era. I hadn't forgotten. I pulled up to the gate, told the guard I was there to pick up my granddaughter, and watched his face when he called the house, and Penelope refused to let me in. I sat in that rental car in the driveway of the gatehouse for 45 minutes, while Calvin's family law contact, a sharp woman named Adele, made phone calls. Around 5:30 p.m., a Greenwich police cruiser pulled up behind me. I'd been worried they were there for me, but they weren't. They were there with a court order. Adele had moved fast. I followed the cruiser to Penelope's house. She came to the door in a cashmere wrap. Her face set hard. The officer explained that I had a temporary emergency custody order, granted on the basis of the mother being incapacitated and the father being unfit due to documented neglect and the granddaughter's prolonged separation from her parents. Penelope tried to argue. The officer didn't engage. Camilla came down the stairs in a pink nightgown, holding a stuffed rabbit. She was so much taller than the last time I'd seen her. She squinted at me for a second, and then her face lit up like a flashbulb, and she said, "Grandpa Walter," and ran straight at me. I caught her and lifted her up, and she put her little arms around my neck, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek not to break down right there on the front porch. "You came," she said. "Grandma Penny said Mommy was too tired for visitors." "Mom, Ma isn't too tired for you, sweetheart. Mommy has been waiting for you. We're going to go see her, okay?" "Okay, Grandpa." I drove her back to Boston that night. We stopped at a diner in Hartford, and I bought a grilled cheese and a chocolate milkshake. She told me about preschool, and about a worm she'd seen in the garden, and about how her mommy used to read her a book about a bunny who couldn't sleep. She didn't ask about her father once. We got to the hospital at 11 p.m. The night nurses bent the rules for me. They let me bring Camilla up to the ICU. Diana woke up when she heard us come in, and when she saw her daughter, she made a sound I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was a sound like something breaking open after being shut for too long. Camilla climbed up onto the bed very carefully, the way only a 4-year-old can climb carefully, and she put her face against her mother's neck, and she said, "Mommy, I missed you. I left them alone." I I went out into the hallway and I stood with my back against the wall, and I cried for the first time since Helen's funeral. The next morning, Trevor finally showed up at the hospital. It was around 9 a.m. He walked into Diana's room, wearing chinos and a polo shirt, looking hungover, carrying a cheap bouquet of carnations from the gift shop downstairs. He stopped in the doorway when he saw me sitting in the chair holding Camilla on my lap. "Walter! Hey!" He looked at Camilla. "What's she doing here?" "She's visiting her mother. My mom said you basically kidnapped her. Take it up with the family court in Connecticut. There's a temporary order. You'll be served today." His face changed. It was the first crack I'd seen in him. "Wait, what?" I looked at him. I looked at this man who had married my daughter, who had stood in front of a minister and promised to love her in sickness and in health, who had let her lie in an ICU for 4 days without telling her family, who had been drinking champagne on a yacht while she fought for her life. I looked at him, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not even disgust. Just nothing. The way you look at a piece of garbage on the side of the road. "Trevor, the LLC has been frozen, as of yesterday at 4 p.m. Your access to the consulting firm's accounts is gone. The bank has been notified about the forged signature on the line of credit. The refinance application on the brownstone has been killed, and Diana's divorce attorney will be in touch this week. You should retain counsel." He stared at me. "You can't." "I can't. I just did. That's my business. That's my company. It's an LLC that I funded, in which I hold veto rights and partial ownership, and which you've been using as a personal slush fund while committing financial fraud. I'd think very carefully about what you say in this room, Trevor. There's a hospital security camera in the corner." There wasn't a security camera. I was bluffing. He didn't know that. He looked at Diana. She was awake. She was watching him. Her expression was the calmest I'd seen on her since I got there. "Diana, honey, we can talk about this. This is your dad making a mountain out of a molehill. Get out," she said. "What?" "Get out of my room, Trevor. I don't want you here. Diana, get out." She didn't have much voice, but she had enough. He left. The next 2 months were the hardest months of my life since Helen died, and also some of the most clarifying. I rented a furnished apartment 3 blocks from the hospital. I bought groceries and cooked simple meals for myself and brought soup to Diana every day. Camilla started preschool at a place near the apartment. I read to her every night. Diana's transplant came through on a Tuesday in late June. A young woman in a car accident in New Hampshire. We never learned her name, but I think about her family every day. Diana's surgery took 11 hours. I sat in the waiting room with Jocelyn and held her hand, and I prayed to a God I hadn't really spoken to since 2013. Diana came through it. She came through it hard, and she came through it slowly, but she came through it slowly, but she came through it. By August, she was walking around the unit. By September, she was home, in a small apartment we'd rented together, with Camilla and me and a home health nurse who came twice a week. The brownstone got sold as part of the divorce. Trevor agreed to a quick settlement when he realized the alternative was his line of credit fraud being prosecuted. He gave up custody rights to Camilla in exchange for the criminal charges being held in abeyance. He moved to Florida, last I heard. The real estate agent dumped him within a month, once she figured out he was broke. Diana got better. Slowly. She left the firm and started her own practice from home, doing legal aid work. She said the corporate world had nearly killed her, and she wanted to do something that mattered. I told her I was proud of her. I told her her mother would be proud of her too. Camilla turned 5 in November. We had a small party at the apartment, just the 3 of us and Jocelyn and a couple of Diana's friends. Camilla blew out her candles and made a wish. Later, when I was tucking her in, she told me her wish. I wish that Grandpa Walter would never go away. "Sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere." "Promise." "I promise." I sold my house in Asheville that winter. It wasn't a hard decision. The house was full of Helen, but Helen was also in my heart, and my heart could go anywhere. Diana and Camilla were my whole world now, and they were in Boston. So I moved. I'm 71 years old. I never thought I'd start a new life in a new city at this age. I never thought I'd be a grandfather raising a granddaughter alongside my daughter. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who calls the lawyer in the middle of the night and starts dismantling somebody else's life with a series of phone calls. But I'll tell you something I learned. And I'll say it plain because that's the only way I know how to say things. When you love someone, you watch. You watch even when they tell you not to. You don't barge in. You don't take over. But you keep your eyes open. You notice when the texts get shorter. You notice when the calls get rarer. You notice when something feels off. And when the moment comes, when the phone rings at 4:17 in the morning, you don't ask permission. You go. I went. And I'd do it again. I'd do it 100 more times. Helen, if you're listening, our girl is okay. Our girl is strong. And I kept my promise. I kept living. For her. For Camilla. For us. That's the end of my story. Or maybe just the part that mattered most. Thank you for listening. I've had a lot of time to think about all of it since that 4:17 a.m. phone call. About what I did right and what I did wrong, and what I learned that I wish I'd known 40 years ago. The first thing I learned is that love without attention is just sentiment. I loved Diana from the day she was born. I'd have died for her without thinking twice. But love alone didn't protect her. Love didn't notice that her texts were getting shorter. Love didn't ask the harder questions when she said she was just slammed at work. Love is the easy part. Paying attention is the hard part. And when I let 3 months go by without pushing through her excuses, that wasn't love failing. That was me failing. The second thing I learned is that good people get fooled by bad people because good people assume everyone is operating in good faith. I'd handed Trevor $150,000 and a co-signature on a mortgage because I trusted my daughter, and because trust is what families do. But trust without verification is just hope, wearing a nice suit. Calvin had insisted on those veto rights 5 years ago, and I thought he was being paranoid. He wasn't. He was being wise. There's a difference between trusting someone and being naive. And at my age, I should have known better. The third thing I learned is that the moment you decide to act, you have to act all the way. When I sat in that hospital cafeteria and heard Trevor laugh on the phone, something in me made a decision. I didn't waver after that. I didn't give him a chance to explain or apologize or worm his way out. I just moved. Calvin moved. Adele moved. And by the time Trevor walked into that hospital room with his cheap carnations, the ground had already shifted under his feet. Hesitation is what predators count on. People like Trevor get away with what they do because the people around them keep giving them one more chance, one more conversation, one more benefit of the doubt. I didn't give him any of those things. I won't apologize for that. The fourth thing I learned is that strength isn't loud. Diana, in that hospital bed, weighing about 90 pounds, with tubes in her arms, found the breath to whisper, "Get out," to the man who'd been destroying her life. That was strength. Camilla, 4 years old, climbing carefully onto a hospital bed so she wouldn't hurt her mother. That was strength. The young woman in New Hampshire whose family said yes to organ donation on the worst day of their lives. That was strength too. I'm 71. I don't have many lessons left to learn. But the ones I learned this year, I'm going to carry. Watch the people you love. Trust, but write things down. Move fast when it counts. And remember that the quietest people in the room are usually the bravest.